Hey everybody, it's Mr. Smith here. This is Unit 1, Consumption, Lesson 2, the Fundamental Assumptions of Economics. So in Lesson 1 we learned the fundamental problem. What is it? Scarcity, right? So we learned about scarcity, the problem of having unlimited wants in a world of limited resources. As we try to solve this problem as economists, we need to take on a certain lens, a certain way that we view the world. I was looking for sunglasses to be like lens, but I couldn't find any. But, in any discipline, there is a certain lens that you take to that discipline. So if you're in art class, maybe one of those lenses is looking at things from different perspectives. You look at a portrait and you look at it straight on, but then you look at that portrait from the side and you see, like, how does that change your interpretation? How does that change your understanding of the work? Same thing with economics, with this discipline. When we view the world, we don't view the world just as who we are as human beings, as Mr. Smith. You don't view the world as Kiara or as Quanisha. You need to pause and you need to say, no, I am economist Kiara right now. I am economist Quanisha right now. So I need to think about the world with these certain assumptions in mind. They should be at the forefront. That's what we're going to learn today. As we solve the problem of scarcity, or we try to figure out how to address it, we're going to do so with the lens that economists use. That way, when you are talking to financiers or talking to economists, when you go to college and you take an econ class, you can talk shop. You're not just going to be a student. You're going to be like, oh yeah, let's think about this through the lens of economists. And they'll be like, whoa, where'd you learn that? And then they'll say, Mr. Smith's class. So there's four of them. The four fundamental assumptions of economics. That's lesson 2 from unit 1. Let's get rocking and rolling. All right, you should be able to answer these questions. There are 2 parts to the definition of scarcity. What are they? We're in a world of blank and blank. Unlimited wants, that's the first part. Limited resources, that's the definition of scarcity. And then draw a vocabulary cartoon where you illustrate the word maximize. You can just tell me, what does that word, I kind of gave it away with my hands. What does the word maximize mean? As opposed to minimize, which is make something as small as possible. Maximize is make something as large as possible. All right. Let's see. I'm going to skip the exit ticket review. You can come to me if you have questions about your exit ticket. And we're going to get into Unit 1, Lesson 2, the fundamental assumptions of economics. So, if you remember from Lesson 1, we did the island survival activity. You had to figure out how to maximize your utility given the limited resources that you had on the island. Well, because we have unlimited wants, humans consume things. That's how we meet our unlimited wants. So like I said in the first lesson, when I'm hungry, that's a want. I consume food. When I'm tired, I consume sleep. When I am bored, I consume entertainment. But no matter what I am consuming, that's the way that I address my unlimited wants. So to consume something, that's a word we're going to be using a lot. The unit itself is Unit 1, consumption. So we need to know what it means. And to consume something simply means to use it up. So with food, that means you're eating it all. With a lot of natural resources, like if we need to make paper, it means cutting down a tree and then putting it through a factory that turns it into paper. So using up the resource is consuming the resource. And that isn't always as cut and dry as eating a burger. Like, we consume entertainment when we watch the movie. That is consuming the movie. We call that consumption. Even though, you didn't eat it and gobble up and it's gone forever, we still call that consumption. Just using up a resource. Okay. And when we consume things, that makes us consumers. So one role everybody plays in the economy is as a consumer. Let's think about it. Today, you were a consumer. You probably didn't even know it. So pause for a second, and I want you to think, what was something that you've consumed today? What made you a consumer today? I was a very clear consumer today. I went to Starbucks, so I bought a coffee. That was me as a consumer, and then drinking the coffee was me as a consumer. I also had some Mr. Everything for lunch. That was me as a consumer. And I bought some bubbly water because I'm obsessed with this stuff. So that is something else that I consumed today. That was me as a consumer. I also consumed knowledge when I learned how to do this video recording. That was me as a consumer of information. So we are consumers every day. There's no day that you're not a consumer. We are always consumers. That is one of our roles in economy. And this whole unit, now that you finally know what a consumer is, we can actually understand this unit. Do you remember what's the title of Unit 1? It's consumption. And that's because what we are learning, the first lens through which we're learning economics is through the lens of a consumer. So this whole unit is about how the economy affects me as someone who consumes things, as someone who uses resources in order to get my unlimited wants. So now that we know that, hopefully that gives you a little bit more framing about this first unit. As a human, we consume things. We do that to address our unlimited wants, which is a part of scarcity, that fundamental problem, and that makes us consumers. Okay, what do you call this consumption? Yes, it is. Eating food. What about this? Yeah, what's being consumed? Entertainment. What about this? Is this consumption? I could see it being consumption in a few ways. It's consuming gas, because you have to use gas in order to ride your dirt bike. If he's an entertainer, then it's consumption for us to watch him ride the dirt bike. And if he likes riding it, then he's consuming the joy of the experience. He's consuming the experience of riding a dirt bike. That is consumption. What about this? There are probably some ways that you could see consumption, but by and large, this is actually the other side of economics. I said we're all consumers. The other hat that we all have, which is Unit 2, so we'll be doing that later, is production. Consuming is using up the resource. Production is making the resource. So you need a producer in order to have a consumer. They work together. For this first unit, we're just thinking about ourselves as consumers. We are not thinking about ourselves as producers. All right, so scarcity. We talked about it last time, the fundamental problem in economics. Do you all think that scarcity affects rich people? People who have a lot of money that they could get whatever they wanted, like really, like they truly could. Well, the answer is yes. Scarcity affects all of us, rich and poor. Because even rich people who can get whatever they want at a moment's notice are still never going to be fully satisfied. There's a data that shows that people's happiness, it increases with income, but only to a certain extent. And after that, some of the super rich are actually, they are documented as being less happy. And there's tons of speculation as to why, but those unlimited wants are still not being fulfilled. And it could be, yeah, I have all the material things that I need, but there's something else, whether it's socio-emotional, whether it's spiritual, whether it's interpersonal. There are still wants that cannot be satisfied. So that problem of unlimited wants affects us all, even rich people. And the problem of limited resources. Sure, rich people can get more of that pie, but that pie is still limited. And so scarcity affects us all. But, like I just said, it affects us all in different ways, and that's based on what and how we consume, which is based on access. Do you have a grocery store close by? Where do you go to get your food? That's access. Where do you go to clean your clothes? Where do you go for entertainment? That's access. What's nearby? It's also based on, let's see, access is one. Um, Culture is another one. What you find interesting, what you consume, is largely based on how you were raised, how you grew up, your family and your cultural values, norms, the things that you enjoy. So, consumption affects us, scarcity affects us, no matter who we are. And the differences in consumption are both causes and effects of inequity. We don't all have the same amount, and a lot of that is largely based on race. A lot of that is largely based on the income background of your family. So how you were born already affects kind of where you stand in this. For the United States, we are a capitalist economy. So everyone is fighting for more of the pie, but in order for me to get more, you have to get less. So this creates disparities in income, access to resources, which on a system level creates inequities, largely for people of color and for low-income families. So how we consume is both evidence of that inequity, but it also feeds into that inequity because it can either because when you consume something, you're giving someone else money for that, and so that is largening, increasing the pie for one and decreasing it for another. So there's a lot to this. We're going to talk about it the whole year, but I just wanted to put that on your forefront. That realization that consumption matters. Not only is it representative of inequities, but it also feeds into inequities. All right. So scarcity affects us differently because of different resources. A shortage, there's a difference between scarcity and shortage. You need to know that difference. So a shortage is a temporary situation when there is not enough of a resource. I just got done talking about how we have inequities. Well, those inequities are systemic, and it's not something that you're just going to solve by quickly getting more of a resource. A shortage, on the other hand, that is when you have a limited resource that you can quickly solve just by getting more. So, for example, Mr. Smith doesn't have a pen, so that is a shortage. I need one pen and I don't have one. Voila. Shortage solved. Boom. Or let's say that I was passing out papers and there were 20 students in class. I only had 18 papers. I was short 2 papers. That's a shortage. But that can easily be solved. I go to the copier, make more copies. Shortage is taken care of. Scarcity, on the other hand, it is systemic. It is a large problem. You can't just solve scarcity by getting more resources. So you need to know the difference between shortage, which is having a temporary limitation to the resources that you need, and scarcity, which is having limited resources on a systemic level that can never meet our unlimited wants. So let's look at some examples. Tell me if you think this is shortage or scarcity. What do you think? Scarcity or shortage? So this is shortage. Philip is short $50. He needs $50 more to go see Beyonce. So that is a shortage. That is a temporary situation, and you can easily solve that by getting $50. What about this one? Again, that is shortage. She wanted a certain flavor of gum. They did not have it. That was a temporary situation. Remember, shortages are temporary, and it can easily be solved by getting more. Maybe Walmart just goes to their manufacturer. They get some more gum. Yolanda gets the gum. Shortage solved. What about this? So this is scarcity. You can see that there isn't a specific amount that Clayton lacks. Like Yolanda, she lacks 1 gum. Philip lacks $50. In my example, Mr. Smith lacked 2 pieces of paper for the class. Here, Clayton doesn't lack a specific amount. He constantly needs to provide for his family because his family has unlimited wants but limited resources. So that's why he drives a truck for a living. So that is not an example of a shortage, that is scarcity. What about this one? So again, it's a temporary situation. There isn't enough water. You can solve that by getting more water. This is shortage. So this is talking more systemic about the supply and the demand. It's not talking about a specific amount that needs to be rectified. It's more systemic. This is scarcity. This is a specific thing that he's lacking, 1 towel, so that is a shortage. He could get another towel and then he would solve his problem. That is temporary, that is a shortage. Okay, now that you've got the idea, what do you think is the difference between scarcity and shortage, and how are they related? Go ahead, tell me your ideas. How are they different? How are they similar? What do you think? So you should have identified that a shortage is temporary, whereas scarcity is systemic, it's long term. But they're both related because they both deal with having limited resources. For a shortage, it's I don't have enough for the given time. For scarcity, it's we as a society don't have enough to meet our unlimited wants systemically forever. That's what we're trying to solve. So that's a way that they're related. Oops. Okay. So like I said, today's lesson, lesson 2, is on the 4 fundamental assumptions. As we learn more about scarcity, now we know more about ourselves as consumers, and we know how shortages exist. We can view the world with 4 fundamental assumptions. Here they are. Boom. The first one, that we are rational. That human beings are rational. That word rational means that we are logical, that we do things based on cause and effect. So if I put my hand to a hot oven, whew, that hurt, I don't do it again. That's rational. I learned the first time and I changed my behavior. We respond to incentives in a logical way. That is our first assumption. Now, there is a lot of discussion out there in economics about whether or not this fundamental assumption is true. And to be completely honest, I don't think it's true. I don't think that humans are rational all the time. I think we are sometimes, but not all the time. A lot of times we'll act out of instinct, we'll act out of fear or excitement or confusion. That's not rational, that's not logical. A lot of times we make silly decisions because we want to impress somebody or just based on emotion. So I don't think we are always rational. And there's a field of economics, for those of you who are really interested, called behavioral economics that actually explores how humans interact behaviorally as opposed to rationally. It's super fascinating. The Pulitzer Prize winner this past year for economics, not Pulitzer, excuse me, Nobel, the Nobel Prize winner for economics most recently, won and he's a behavioral economist. I consider myself a behavioral economist as well. So, but we're going to put on the lens where we're going to think about humans as rational, that we do respond to incentives in a certain way. Second one is self-interested. Humans care about how this affects them. What's in it for me? I eat food because it makes me full. I sleep because I enjoy it. Like, we assume that humans do things because it benefits us. That is what self-interested means. We do things, they could also help others, but we enjoy helping others. So there is like that self-interested piece. So economists assume that everything we do is ultimately tied to our own self-interest. Do you agree? Interesting. Another fundamental assumption is that we all have different tastes and preferences. I may like strawberries, Hadim may like blueberries, Stephen likes raspberries, Labrisha likes cherries. We all like a different fruit. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just the way it is. That's our different tastes and preferences. I like the roller coasters. Janice likes the Ferris wheel. Not mad about it. We just have different tastes and preferences. And this one's kind of confusing. The last assumption is called valuation. That's the assumption that says we believe as economists that we can quantify. That means we can turn into numbers. That's why I have the calculator over here. Our tastes and preferences. So, for example, do you like, think of a type of chip that you like. Maybe it's Cheetos. Maybe it's Doritos. Get one in your head, a chip that you like. All right, now think of a single bag of chips. Okay, so for me, I'm thinking of a single bag of Takis. Would you pay $1 for those Takis? Yes or no? Would you pay $10 for those Takis, that single bag? Would you pay $100 for that bag of Takis? At some point, you have a limit where you say, nope, I wouldn't pay any more for that bag of Takis. That's my limit. So we would say then, all right, that bag of Takis, to you, it's worth $2 because that's how much you would pay for it. That's valuation. So that is another assumption of economics, is that everything that we enjoy, all of this utility that we get from consumption, we can quantify it with a specific number. A lot of times it's a dollar amount, and that is valuation. That's the fourth assumption. All right, so quick review of today's lesson. From last time, you should know what scarcity is. You should know what economics is. You should know what oikonomos is. Who does scarcity affect? That's a new one. Who does scarcity affect? The rich, the poor, the middle class, people of color, white people. Who does it affect? Correct answer, everybody. Does it affect us all the same? Correct answer, no. There are inequities that exist, so scarcity does not affect us all the same, but it does affect us all. All right, what is consumption? Go ahead and define in your own words consumption. So you should say consumption is the process of using up a resource. Consume sleep, we consume food, we consume entertainment. But yes, consumption is the process of using up a resource. What's a shortage? So a shortage, unlike scarcity, is a temporary situation where you don't have enough of something, but it can be solved. I don't have enough colored pencils. I go to the store, I get more. Boom, problem solved. Whereas scarcity is systemic. And then what are those 4 economic assumptions? Can you list them off? Can you identify them? The first one is that we are rational, that we think logically based on cause and effect, and we respond to incentives in a predictable way. Now, I don't actually think that's true, but that's the lens we're going to view the world. Assumption number 2, that we are self-interested, that we care ultimately about things that are in our own best interest and will help us out. Assumption 3, that we have different tastes and preferences. We don't all like the same thing, and that's okay. Humans are different. And assumption 4, valuation, that we can put a number amount to our tastes and preferences. All right, you all, that is Unit 2, Lesson 2. If you have questions, you can text me on Remind. You can email me. You can catch me in class. Hope you enjoyed it.